Bag, I want the bag. Work my way from a garden to a track. Flip it from a track to a plot full of acres. Do it for the farmers and the producers and the makers. What we even here for? Occasionally I ask it. I know it's more than struggling, anticipating the casket. Reap what we sow, trying to fill up my basket. Life's a plantation, I self-law and master. Over the plot I've been granted on this planet. Now it's slanted, cause the chosen been supplanted. But if you overstand it, it was spoken. Fractured, but we ain't broken. Even though some would rather play the role of token, we growing. Black through the essence of a presence. We carry the blood of gods, we carry the mind of peasants. Rich black gardens, future look more like Eden. Multiply seeds like the seed banks in Sweden. Rep my planners on plan according to season. B1 code, switching it up is treason. Black power, family what we eat. Either we get fed or we feed. B1AG.
What's growing on? What is growing on? What is growing on? Welcome back to the B1AG Daily Bread podcast, where we focus on Black agriculture as it pertains to agricultural production, education, marketing, nutrition, and economics for the B1 family and the Black community. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about the USDA. Now, we've had several shows about the USDA and the current farm bill, where they dedicated over $4 billion to for debt relief, supposed to be for Black farmers, which turns into farmers of color, which turns into socially disadvantaged farmers. Well, that legislation had received pushback from white farmers claiming anti-white racism because they weren't able to participate in the debt relief, although they even stated that they didn't want it or need it. But then there was also pushback from the banks, saying that they would lose money from early repayment. Okay, despite all of that, the USDA has announced that they want to begin debt relief payments starting in June. But this also comes at a time where farmland prices are rising, and out west of the United States, we're in the middle of a megadrought. So we're going to talk about all of these different occurrences, these different things going on at one time, and our best way to navigate through, these vines of situations that we find ourselves in as it pertains to agriculture, our community, and in this country at this day and time. So the USDA to begin debt relief payments as farmland prices rise and the West faces a mega drought. Farmer Brown DMC, what say you?
First, I just like to say peace to the B1 family. Hope everybody's doing well today. We got a beautiful day up here in Kentucky. It's not so much so in the West. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning, and they were just talking about all of the more than 60% of the underground aquifers or wells in North America are going dry as well. We had spoken about this briefly before this podcast, that there's a difference between a drought and just going dry. Drought meaning, okay, it's dry now and then eventually some water will come, but we're facing a situation where the land, because if you think about out west, this is where a lot of our produce comes from. A lot of the water is just gone. Once these wells run dry, they literally take thousands of years. These water underground aquifers, they take thousands of years to recharge or replenish. And so the question has to be asked, okay, so where do we get water from if there's no more water? I will say, and this isn't deviating away from the topic, I mean, there's tons and tons and megatons of ice up north and down south, whether you're talking about the Arctic or Antarctica. But that's for a later discussion. But saying that to say, we really have some serious issues that specifically our community is going to have to deal with. And I keep saying, in the time of ultimate crisis, those that we're in natural competition with aren't waking up in the morning figuring out how they can solve the melanated people's problems. And so when we talk about this USDA beginning to pay off the debt relief, you can't have that conversation without tying in everything else going on. And, could this be a diversion? Could this be an act of altruism? Could this be just everything that these Black farmers have been asking for? To put it in perspective, not to get too deep into it yet, this is only going to affect 13 to 18,000 farmers. Like the brother said earlier, it went from Black to minority to farmers of color to socially disadvantaged. Within this socially disadvantaged group, you have Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, not the Aboriginal, melanated, Hispanics, and immigrants and refugees. And so these are 5 to 6, 7 different groups that stand to reap this debt relief. And so we're not here to disparage anybody who has been facing hardships, but here at the B1AG community, this is about our situation and what we're going to do to uplift our community and uplift our Black producers. And I say Black just as a very generic term. This is what people refer to it as on paper. And so for the sake of this conversation, this is what we'll say. But saying that to say, okay, so there's 15,000 farmers who stand to get $4 billion worth of debt relief. We see how other legislation is being passed favoring every other group in the world, but what we call the melanated Black and what we call North America. And so let's just say, okay, yeah, we're going to evenly disperse this amongst all of these colors on this spectrum of socially disadvantaged. Maybe 5,000 Black farmers may get their debt relieved, maybe. And that's a good thing. I mean, if there's one brother or sister whose farm is saved because they got their debt relief, that is a win for the community, specifically that family. But okay, if 5,000 farmers got this relief, they tell us right now that there's only 40,000 out of 3.5 million Black farmers in North America. And so if there's 40,000 and only 5,000 got this debt relief, you still have another 35,000. We also know that 75% of this less than 40,000 Black farmers are earning less than $10,000 a year on their operations. Let me repeat that. Of the less than 40,000 Black farmers left who've been strong enough to keep their land and the few that's been coming into the field, only 75% are earning more than $10,000. I've met people who've made that rain in a strip club. So we really got to put this in context. The USDA, I noticed they skipped over March and April, and they started back with the headlines of, oh, yes, we're doing a great thing, even though the white farmers who hate it, want to sue, even though the banks are pushing back. See, we're pushing through for you brown people. But we really got to put the numbers into perspective. This is going to help a few, but what are we as a community going to do to be able to help the others that aren't going to get this debt relief? They might have gotten their loans from a private corporation, which a private entity or lender, which this doesn't cover. Even the farmers that are getting debt relief, this isn't going to give them funds to drill wells, as we see that water is going to become an issue. This isn't giving anybody money to go purchase new lands, as we see that, and we're going to get into this later as the price of land is going up. This isn't going to create markets for the farmers, for the few farmers who receive this debt relief. This isn't going to get them equipment. This isn't going to help their actual business outside of forgiving debt. And so once again, I've forgiven something you owe me, but there's a whole new field of challenges that mum's the words on. And so as the B1 community, we want to continue having this conversation just so we can stoke our wheels of really figuring out what can we do to help this 75% of our Black farmers who've had the wherewithal to still stay in the game, to make sure they stay in the game in a situation where these droughts continue, in a situation where all the land continues to get bought up. And so I look forward to having this conversation today.
Now, before we get started, definitely want to read our copyright non-disclosure, because we definitely don't need any of them problems. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Now, what I wanted to show you, share with you first, B1AG family, is it's a short video. It's only like 2.5 minutes, but it outlines very well about the drought that's going on in the western part of the United States. Again, as our Farmer Brown stated before, a drought indicates that there is there's not a lot of water now, but the water will come back. That's not what's going on out west. Climate change is to the point where the droughts have been going on for so long. We're talking about almost 20 years of sustained droughts, to the point where the aquifers, the water the levels are so low that there may not ever be a recovery in our lifetime. So we have to really look at the different ways to save water, as well as meet the pressing needs of food production for the country. That includes the B1 family, but this problem is even bigger than just our community. Just one moment as I pull up this video talking about the megadroughts.
I'm sure you've noticed that it's been a dry winter. Well, we're not the only ones. The entire western United States is suffering from the lack of rain. And now the National Weather Service, NOAA, is calling it a mega drought.
So the researchers have defined the mega drought as about 20 years of drought.
That is what the West is experiencing, according to meteorologist Alex Tardy with the National Weather Service. Not every year, but sustained deficits over the past 20 years. This year, we're 4+ inches below average.
May not sound like much, right? But when our annual average is only about 10 inches of rain, we're missing about half of our rainfall.
That lack of rain extends across the Colorado Basin.
And the Colorado River system is in a mega drought, basically starting, since the 90s, on and off.
Which is where we get half our water. It also affects Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico.
Really has brought severe drought all across the Southwest and Intermountain West, including the Rockies.
This is compounded by the lack of summer monsoons.
But last year was one of the driest monsoons, July through September, that we've seen in about 20 years.
A main cause is the Eastern Pacific high pressure.
This massive area of upper level high pressure has been around for about 2 years now, and that's a big part of why this drought has really grown across the Intermountain West and the Rockies and the Southwest.
Add to that the effects of La Nina.
That is why we're already seeing this expansion, and why we're predicting, additional expansion of the drought across much of the lower part of the United States.
The West has had droughts in the past, but management will be the key to getting through this one.
There's no doubt we've entered into a severe to exceptional drought. So it's going to be really important how we manage the Colorado system and California as we go forward here, because there's not a lot of promise for major or significant relief from just precipitation alone.
And it doesn't look like we're going to see any measurable rain in the near future or long term. So the key now is start to conserve. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Dealing with the factions we deal with, I remember when I was doing my undergrad studies, I had a water quality course, and we saw a map of Southern California where it was on the border with Mexico. And so on the map, it showed all of this lush green area in Southern California, and the tip of Mexico was bone dry. And I mean, you're literally talking about over the border. What that meant was the water was being diverted from northern Mexico to California. what that means is, okay, I'm facing a drought, wherever this location I'm at. And since, we're the only ones dealing with these issues, we're going to deal with it in a way that benefits us, that being the opaque layer as I call it. Saying that to say Mexico was bone dry. They weren't able to grow anything on their side of this arbitrary line because the people on the northern part of it decided, okay, we want to use this to grow our crops up here in Southern California. Now, I'm pretty sure I ate some produce, tomatoes, some sort of fruit from that area where this was grown. And so I'm not coming from this as impugning anybody or accusing anybody, more so than these are the dynamics at play. When we talk about these droughts going on, so the only other alternative, if there's not going to be any water that's just going to come out of the sky, it means it's going to be diverting. When you think about the concept of why a dam exists, it's to divert water flow. I'm not going to say fortunately because I don't want to put it in that context. The majority of our black farmers are in the southeast of what we call North America. This is from your Virginia, Carolinas, down to your Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia. Now, these states, what we call states or territories, are around the Gulf of Mexico. When you're talking about underground water, the aquifers are very different than salt water. You can't water your crops with salt water from an ocean. Because I know some people's minds, and I originally thought how can you have a drought and you're surrounded by water? The world's 75% water. Well, you have to have fresh water. Because say if you have saline water or salty water, it's going to wilt your crops. It's going to destroy your crops. And so when they talk about this shortage of water, they're talking about specifically fresh water, underground water. Potable water. I'm not in these meetings to know what the plan is, but I think as a community, we got to know that there are some thoughts. There are some very serious conversations going on right now. Okay, since we don't have water here, where can we get it from? What are the mechanisms in place to divert this water? I hate to come from a Chicken Little mindset, but I got to know if there's an opportunity, just looking at history, if there's opportunity to take from the brown group to, make it rain on the other group, that will be taking place. And so I'm making that point to say, what can we do right now when we think about investments? We think about Sister McCarthy up in New York. She invested in a well. She invested in a well, some land where there was a well at. Right now, when we think about the concept of purchasing land, so we've had a lot of people reach out to us about purchasing farmland or just land. Obviously, we lean towards farmland, but there's other uses of land. But we specifically want water. We've had a discussion about, there were talks, I haven't heard anything else about the talks, of possibly giving 32 million acres to black farmers as some sort of form of reparative justice. Now, during that talk, we were asking, is this good land? Is there water? So say if I want to grow some crops, am I going to have access to water wherever this land is? And so it seems like these are isolated situations, but they're all tied together. They're all tied together. And if we can't, on the front end, contextualize, what is valuable land versus you just gave me a big lemon, is going to make all the difference in the world of other things we ask for or demand politically later. Because once again, land is a hard asset. There's no debate whether land has value or not. And we're going to get into that a little more. I want you to pull this video up. Right now, there are about 4 million acres of farmland for sale. About 4 million acres out of 1.9 billion in North America. We know Bill Gates bought up 242,000 acres. Bezos is up there, a couple thousand acres. Ted Turner, a lot of the big name billionaires, they understand that this is where the bag is. And so, for my financial minded people here, for my people to really understand how to get to the bag and leverage assets versus liabilities, we really want to get people's minds thinking about seeing land as just as valuable as a stock or anything else. And even if you don't want to buy land, there's also leasing and renting options. But if you can play this video real quick. Unfortunately, a lot of our people, when I say our people, the B1 family, don't take nothing serious unless the other people speak about it. And so this conversation is very important to me personally because I work with different farmers. I work within this field to know that these they're not even silent dynamics, but they're dynamics that you only have one group of people who are really actively out on the front lines trying to figure out what to do about it. And then our group that tends to get the brunt of anything negative, kind of is not, I'm not going to say nobody, but it's not a critical mass of us right now who are bringing this up to the forefront. But play this video real quick, and we're going to deep dive into it a little more. And we want to give you some specific places where it's good farmland to invest in, and also just some general numbers if you're looking to do a little more research.
Beautiful pastures of green land, large fields of corn, tractors working the land, grain bins in the vast expanse, and blue sky. We all have a picture that comes to mind when someone speaks about farming and farmland, even if it only comes from television. But most of us would never imagine owning farmland. You might be a farmer who has been farming for years and has always rented the land you work. Or you might live a completely urban lifestyle, live in an apartment in the city, and know nothing about farming. But surprisingly, there might be benefits to owning farmland even for you. Let's find out why farmland is a good investment. Please remember to give this video a like and to subscribe to the channel. And if you turn on the notifications bell, then you will always know when we post anything, so you won't miss a thing. There are a lot of options when it comes to owning farmland. Owning farmland isn't only for farmers. You have a lot of options when you invest in farming land. First, you could obviously go and farm yourself. Many people have a lifelong dream of becoming a farmer and making a living.
Whoa, hold it. I'd like to tell you how to get $5,000 in free silver
off the land. And there are many benefits to this option, but many others have no desire to work on a farm at all. And that's okay too. But still, even for them, there are benefits of investing in farmland. Even if you don't know the land yourself, there are always farmers who need to rent land to farm on. So if you want to buy land for this purpose, it's a good idea to purchase land in an area where there are lots of farmers who work in big areas. Or you could do nothing with it. Yes, you heard that right. Doing absolutely nothing could make good business sense too. We will see how buying land and just letting it rest can still be a great investment. This would be when you want to make more of a long-term investment and you have time to wait for your investment to return its funds. It is a lower risk than investing in the stock market. Investing in stocks can be a roller coaster ride. Some people get hooked on the adrenaline, and it's true that you can make a lot of money on the stock market if you watch it closely enough, but investing in farmland is more stable. It is very unlikely that prices of land will suddenly completely bottom out. And historically, farmland has even outperformed some of the major investments like gold, timber, and even the NASDAQ. So it's a great way of diversifying your portfolio. I wouldn't say that you should invest all your money in the land, not if it is only for an investment and not to use in some way. But it is a great stable investment to diversify your portfolio. If you do rent it out, it is a great annual income. And if you just want to buy it to keep it for later use, then it is still an investment that won't lose its value over time. In fact, more than likely, the value of the land will keep rising. For a farmer, to own your own land has many advantages. When you own the land, you have a lot more say in how you use it. Things like crop rotation and conservation strategies are all on you. You never have to ask permission when making these decisions. And you never have the uncertainty that someday someone might decide to use your land for something else. If you only rent, then you ultimately don't really have complete control. The day might come that the owners of the land decide to sell to someone else, or even use the land for something completely different. So owning gives you more peace of mind. It sets your family up for a more secure future. When you own land, you can be sure that future generations will be able to still work the same land. And on the business side of farming, when you own your own land, it also grows a stronger business and helps you grow. It also helps you build equity. Owning your own land helps you build equity. If you ever need anything, like machinery or even more land that you can't buy with cash, then equity becomes important. To get a loan for certain things, you have to have some sort of equity for banks to be willing to invest in your business. And many times, the machinery on farms, for example, tractors, become dated and they don't work well to use as equity. So having something else to fall back on to build your business is very important. Productivity is way up. Farming technology has made massive strides forward in the last years, and almost each year the knowledge grows on how to make your farm more productive. Companies that work with the seeds and equipment manufacturers all work hard to research and develop better ways of farming. This has meant that farmland productivity has nearly tripled since the 1960s. So with the same amount of land that you would have had in the 60s, you could now yield 3 times as much crops each year than it would have yielded back then. So without spending anything, each year you can get a little more out of your land than you would have gotten the previous year. Your farmland becomes more valuable each year that you own it, not only for the land itself, but for the yields it can have. There is also more of a demand for plant-based food. While there's still a big demand for meat and dairy products, more and more people are seeing the importance of having a plant-based diet. So, plant-based food becomes an even higher demand each year. We have always needed crops and vegetables, but now, more than ever, there are higher demands for these products each year. And this isn't just limited to edible crops anymore either. Farmland is becoming more important when it comes to green pursuits. Crops that are used for biofuels are becoming in a higher demand than they have ever been. And while this industry grows, it is going to become more lucrative. And this would mean that even lower grade crops will soon make more money for farmers than it has ever made before. And then there's land that is used to make wind farms. Land for this use is becoming more and more important each and every year. With each year as the population increases, we need to find ways that are cleaner and better to generate electricity and take care of the population. So more food and clean energy are going to become even more important as the years pass. When buying land, you don't have to do anything. When you buy a house, you have to have some sort of knowledge about the area you are buying in. And if you buy property as an investment, then you need to have some property knowledge. Generally, there would be some things you need to fix up or look after when it's your property. You might even have to fix the house up. But when you buy raw land, you don't have to know anything. You just need to know if the land will work for what you want to use it for. For example, if you want to rent it to a farmer, you need to make sure that it is in an area where
If you look at every person with a credit score over 800, they all have one thing in common.
agricultural and farmland is in high demand. If you're buying it to keep it as an investment and to sell to developers in a few years, then you need to make sure that it is close to urban areas that are busy expanding. It is a very hands-off investment. Again, when buying and renting property, you will always be busy with that property. Whether it is taking care of little things that break or making sure that tenants are taking care of your investment, you will always be tied down by the property. You need to be close enough to check up on it and to go and fix things. But buying and renting out farmland is completely hands-off. You could rent it to a farmer and never have to go and check on it. You can buy it and never have to look at it again. There's no property that you have to maintain. So you would be getting your rent, and that is all that you have to know about your investment. There is a tax relief for owners of farmland. This differs from countries and states, but most places have some sort of tax relief when you are an owner of farmland, especially if it is land that is being worked on. For some farmers, there are even tax deductions for things like equipment that is aging, as long as you own the land you work. So it might be a way to get more of your investment back too. They aren't making more land. Land supply is decreasing. More farmers try to keep their land in their own family and have each new generation inherit the farmland that their parents worked on. And urban areas are expanding continuously, so urban areas are taking up more and more land. So the land that is available to buy is becoming less. This does mean that in a few years, land value should skyrocket, and you could get a lot of return on the land that you invest in now. It might take a while, but it is very unlikely that you will ever lose money on the investment in the farmland. So if it is such a great investment, why aren't more people investing in farmland? Because they don't know about the advantages of investing in farmland. People aren't aware of just what a great opportunity it is. Or for people who live in cities and other urban areas, they never think of this as a way that you can make money or get an investment. Then there are geographical constraints that people put on buying property. They think that you can only logically buy in an area close to you, but as we saw, you don't really need to manage farmland. And in reality, you don't even need to see the land before you buy, as long as you do your homework about the purchase before exchanging money. So if you're looking for a great investment or to diversify your portfolio, farmland might just be the way to go. Thanks for watching.
They say imitation is the best form of flattery. So once again, here at B1AG, we're not here to give anybody any sort of financial advice. We're not here to try to we are here to convince you to look more into agriculture. I will say, so there were some things he said about, yeah, you can get this land and produce, 3 times more. This is part of the problem. We specifically wanted you to see this video to understand these are the conversations that are going on around the country. We have a lot of social issues going on right now, gender divides, things of that nature, which you can put my gender or your gender in the ground and it's not going to yield anything that can feed people. We want to have this very codified, specific conversation because we see as we're sitting here now, the value of land is going up. What is it? Each second that goes by, the value of land is going up. Every second that we spend, discussing something or talking about something that's not going to yield a return, you don't get time back. Time is one of those things you'll never get it back. And so we really want to have this conversation. I have a little bit of family land, not much. What I could wish was, I wish, I would say the amount of student loan debt that I have equals up to dozens of acres of land. One of the things that's personally important to me about this B1AG conversation is once a person has a context of what's going on, you can save yourself lots of money, learn, somebody telling you how to grow food or produce versus already knowing to invest. When we think about what are the fields we want to get our young people into, not only getting an ag degree to go work for somebody in the office, but learning a trade to possibly work on your own family land. Those of us that are still fortunate to still have some family land. And we want to be very specific. We don't want to just, hey, just go out and buy all of this land. It's about 4 million acres right now in North America up for sale. Average size about 160 acres. Now, what does this look like? We know that the average black farmer, less than 1% are bringing in more than $1 million. Meaning, not a lot of balling, and it's not because the potential doesn't exist. It's just, a lot of these farmers are dependent on these diversified markets. When we have this B1AG conversation, one of the key components is marketing. And so myself, with no ag history per se, my partner and I have a pretty formidable ag marketing business focused around agritourism and produce, getting produce from rural areas, bringing it to the city, distributing it amongst people in urban areas. These are all models where there's no such thing as a leader, no such thing as, oh, well, okay, this person did it, so I can't do it. Like, no, we know that as people live and walk and need to eat and the population increases, you're always going to need to feed people. And so when we think about what can we do to really not only make it rain on the black farmers that exist, but to create land for this next generation of farmers that we want to cultivate. Once again, right now, we have more information than our ancestors as far as how to produce, how to market. We have more information and resources than our ancestors could have dreamed of. To the point I was making about this producing 3 times more, this is how the land got destroyed in the first place. A lot of this land is our Aboriginal ancestors' land that will literally take decades, if not, centuries to be replenished. And so kind of as an action item, can we invest in some of this 4 million acres of land left? Because we see that the Bezoses of the world, the Gates of the world, the Buffetts of the world understand the value. And these people are kind of old in the game, not to age shame, but, so what is Gates getting all of this for? He's not going to hop on a tractor, but he has 3 children, so once again, most of us can't just go individually and buy 160 acres of land. But when we talk about cooperative economics, do we have groups? Do we have teams in all of the cities where we're highly populated looking to invest? Do we got groups and teams that's like, okay, we'll invest in the land. Matter of fact, we'll find some farmers to lease it to. One of the points brought up in this video was talking about how when you own the land, you have more say-so in what goes on. But at the same time, we also know, okay, if you've never even really thought about this and you're just jumping in the game, you see the value in investment, this is an opportunity for you to find a black farmer who's been doing it. That, maybe they have something small going on their property, but this now becomes an asset to you to make use of your investment. And so this is why we have these conversations, just to connect people, just to get the wheels turning, because once again, we come from a very industrious people. We have industrious genes in us because we've been forced to learn how to do the most with the least. And so if we can take this from a block mindset of how can I flip this to get this block popping to a broader context of farmland, specifically farmland. And I want to keep stressing farmland because there are these trick bags out here just saying, oh, get some land, get some land, get some land. And if you can't produce anything on the land, it's not going to be profitable for you. And so we really want to have a laser beam focus on getting land that is arable. Arable meaning you can actually produce on it. Land where there's water around, there's waterways, there's underground aquifers or access to wells. You don't want to be dependent on city water if you're 100 miles away from the city. But what we're going to do real quick is go over some very specific places right now in North America. And I will say that these aren't the only places to invest in farmland. But some of the the top 12 will be West Central Texas, where you're looking at about 600 an acre. Central Wisconsin, about 5,000 an acre. South Central Florida, you're looking at about 10,000 an acre. Northern Missouri, about 1,400 an acre. Eastern Ohio, 5,000 an acre. Southwest Iowa, 4,000 an acre. Southeastern Wyoming, this is up with Kanye, 4,000 an acre. And the Dakotas, about 5,000. I know here in Kentucky, where I'm at, you're looking at an average about 3,500. These seem like big numbers, but when you think about it per acre, you know, you think about how Booker T. Watley. Once again, this is drawn back to the information our elders already have. He had a process to where you can earn about 125,000 per 25 acres, just producing produce. When we talk about this marketing piece, and then that goes into your yield on your investment. So obviously you want the farmer to make some money because we got to get our farmers making more than 10 stacks a year, right? And so we want the farmer to make money and we want the investors to make money. And more importantly, we want our community to eat. We want our community to have a stable, consistent base of where they're getting food. This is something to build on. Depending on, you know, access to information, you know, I know certain groups are declining in their population. They just are. And this will be what you would call your white folks. Black people, brown people keep reproducing. And so, you know, however you see this dynamic, we're still going to have to eat. You know, they say when you corner a dog, that's when they bark the hardest. That's when they start clawing the hardest. Well, what we found economically, socially, and just existentially, we have a barking dog to realize, okay, my numbers are declining, so let me get all the land I can get. This is the Bill Gates mindset. When you think about the elder Frances Cress Welsing and what she understood about this racial dynamic, this you know, people want to make sure they stay alive. This goes to any group of organisms on the planet. First of all, to stay alive, I need a place where I can get the things I need to eat, whether I'm a lion, a cat, dog, whatever. This is natural. And so the degree that we can make this more of a part of our culture. Peace to the brother Kwame Brown. Like, he's farming, y'all. He's farming. You know, we're seeing him call out the coons and all of this. But I think the bigger picture to pick up from what the brother is saying is he's farming. He's played on the court. He's played on the hardwood, but now he's working in the land. And I think that's the beautiful piece of it. And so the degree that we can have these conversations, not just as an entertainment, I don't know what's too entertaining about this. This is rather disheartening that in 2021, after our ancestors built the wealth of this country, that we're still not on a large scale getting it. And it's not that we're stupid people. We're not stupid people at all. There's been very intentional social marketing to divert our attention in everywhere but land, everywhere but what produces what we need to survive. Because once you have your land, you have a lot more say-so. Once again, as this video was saying, when you have land, you're able to leverage to get equipment. You're able to make more purchases and buy more things to make this productive. You know, it's not an asset you just sit on. We need to feed our people. When we think about all of these children now who, you know, school has changed. What I understood as elementary, middle school, K through 12, that's done. People say, yeah, when we get back to normal, that's done. In my modest opinion, there's no such thing as the new normal. What's going to happen is the degree that we can really point our children, our youth, and not just the youth, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, in a direction that's going to be productive. We can't afford to walk around in this wilderness. Pharaoh's letting the people go whether he wants to or not. And so as we find ourselves in this wilderness, this proverbial wilderness, what are we planning? What is our 20-year plan? What is our 30-year plan? Because this land isn't going down in value. And what I would hate to see is that after all of the strides, after all the information that's available, we've never had as much money, fiat or currency, within our group of what they say 44 million melanated Black Americans. We've never had this much money to invest. Once again, we talk about 900 million we spend on beauty and cosmetics. We're not here to pocket watch anybody. Every household, every individual got their own thing that they answer to, right? And so our thing is just really trying to get this conversation going to get us to think about what can I do to add to this bigger pot of this thing called land, this thing called production, this thing called distribution, this thing called marketing, this thing called education. Because once again, I don't want people to go into debt to get something to bring them profit, especially when we're talking about our children. I learned my lesson. I started late. I didn't understand how important it was. But if we can get these young people now to see the value in learning how to produce, what it means to invest in land. You think about how many, if you got 10 pairs of Jordans, think about it. Jordans now go for like 200, sometimes 1,500, depending off their tailored. These are acres of land. These are acres of land. I think about how many things I bought to where, wow, 2 trips to the mall was literally an acre of land. And all I can do is kick myself. I can't blame anybody. And so all I'm saying is we need to continuously have these conversations. We need to talk to our young people, not beating anybody over the head, but just really have these conversations to stoke people's interest.
Now, as the West continues to go through the drought, I think that's why it's very important that, like Mayor Aja Brown of Compton, she partnered with Plenty, and they built a vertical garden warehouse where they're condensing 700 acres of agricultural production into a 95,000 square foot warehouse, which equates to about 2.5 acres. Now, when you do vertical farming and aeroponics, that uses 90% less water and it yields more. These are the type of agricultural innovations that they're gonna have to become staples as the world continues to change. Climate change is real. They say global warming, but it's not really global warming, it's climate change. You're looking at this lush West Coast where we've always depended on, for growing a lot of our produce and even the cattle, but it's turning into a desert. The world is changing. The world is changing, and we have to adapt with it if we are going to survive. Now, just want to look at some of the comments.
Nothing but air and opportunity. Nothing but air and opportunity. I wouldn't suggest anybody just go out and just buy all sorts of land, have no context. Right now, you can lease land and rent land. Ranges from about $60 to $200 per acre. To try your hand in 2021, it's kind of late in the year, but a 2022 plan. Okay, you know what, baby, we're going to invest in a couple of acres. We're just going to try our hand. It might go well, it might not, but we can afford this. So, we done met a Black farmer that got a couple of acres to lease to us. We put some money in their pocket, and we have an opportunity to really see what this operation looks like. If we can get this 1 acre popping, then guess what? This justifies us getting 2, getting 3, getting 4. This justifies us going the same way we go in on lottery tickets. We're going to go in on something that we know is going to have value. Land of opportunity.
Sir. And of course, here at B1AG, we always advocate for growing your own food. which starts with, being that we're looking for, food security for the B1 community and for everyone. For that matter, we want everyone to be able to eat. It's a right. It's a birthright. We all have to eat on this planet. We need to. So we encourage you to check out going, let's get black to the garden. You can sign up at healthyblackfood.com and use the promo code podcast. You'll get 30% off. Where we actually go through and show you how to get your own garden started. Get those seeds in the ground. It's very important that we do that immediately. We have to go ahead and get our seeds in the ground, and also looking at things like vertical gardens and other ag technology that we can apply that will help us grow sustainably. We need to be more sustainable in our efforts. We need to be aware of the natural resources that we're using and how we can conserve them and use them in the most effective and efficient manner as possible. Now, B1AG family, this is a conversation we want to keep going because it's very important. This is very important because at the end of the day, everything that's going on in this world, it boils down to agriculture. Because if we're not eating, ain't nothing going on. Ain't nothing going on if we're not eating. So we're going to continue this conversation. We hope that we can, put the plant seeds in your brain that can help you think about some ways like, okay, I see what's going on. I think I have a solution that may work, not only for me, but for my community as well. And we can share this knowledge. Because the thing about agriculture, hey, you can compete, you can call it competition if you want, but the more food we produce, it's better for everyone in total. So, Farmer Brown, as we continue this journey we're on to advocate for agriculture and to get more seeds in the ground. But if the people really, 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 really want to know something, what do they need to do, Farmer Brown?
Study up, put some seeds in the ground, and learn how to grow something.
That's right. Let's get it together, y'all. Let's get these seeds in the ground. If you want to show us pictures of your grow operation, your garden, send it to b1aghiphop@gmail.com, and we'd love to highlight it on our podcast because it is important that we do see ourselves out here in a growth mind state and getting our growth on. So, everyone, thank you for sitting through another episode of B1AG Daily Bread Podcast. We hope that you're prosperous. I hope that you get everything you want in life. I hope that you stay in a growth state of mind. And hey, y'all, we'll see y'all when we come back. Peace out.